He handed me the keys with a smile. I thought it was love. I cried, I laughed, I hugged him so tight. I thought this was happiness. But weeks later, I discovered the payments for that gift car weren't from him. They were coming from her, his secret affair. Everything I believed in shattered in a single moment. The man I trusted with my heart had been living a lie all along.
My name is Anna, and I used to think I had a simple, predictable life. We lived in a quiet neighborhood in North Carolina, one of those places where the mailman knew your dog's name and the neighbors waved every morning. My husband, Ryan, was a finance consultant. Calm, steady, the kind of man people trusted with their money. And I was the woman behind the man. I worked part-time at a local floral shop, helped my son with homework, and spent evenings cooking dinner with the radio humming in the background. I used to hum along while I chopped onions, smiling when Ryan would sneak up behind me, kiss my cheek, and whisper, "Smells amazing, babe." We weren't perfect, but I thought we were solid. Until life began showing me how easily solid can turn into shattered. It started small, as betrayal usually does. A late night here, a distracted look there, excuses that sounded reasonable at first, like client dinners, extra meetings, traffic. And every time I asked, he'd smile that disarming smile, the one that once made me fall in love with him, and say, "Don't worry so much, Anna. You know me." And I did. Or at least I thought I did. Our 10th anniversary was approaching that summer. I remember it vividly because I had been saving up, planning something special. Ryan had mentioned wanting to visit the Smoky Mountains again, just like our honeymoon. I imagined us holding hands on that old wooden deck of the cabin, laughing over coffee, watching the mist curl through the trees. But 2 weeks before our anniversary, Ryan surprised me first. He came home one Friday evening, grinning like a boy with a secret. "Come outside," he said. I followed him barefoot, heart pounding, wondering what he was up to. And there it was. A brand new cherry red SUV sitting in the driveway, gleaming under the porch light. For a moment, I couldn't speak. He tossed me the keys and said, "Happy anniversary early. You deserve to drive something better than that old Corolla." I laughed, tears stinging my eyes. I remember saying, "Ryan, this is too much. You didn't have to." He interrupted, pulling me into a hug. "You always say that. Just take it. You've earned it." It felt so genuine. He knew I'd been driving that rattling old car for years, saving every spare dollar for our son's college fund instead of myself. And that night when I sat behind the wheel, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Seen, appreciated. Ryan had never been extravagant, but I thought maybe after years of quiet sacrifices, he wanted to remind me I still mattered. For a while, I let myself believe that. We took the car out for dinner that night, a small Italian place downtown. The waiter brought a bottle of wine on the house, and Ryan lifted his glass toward me. To us. To new beginnings. I smiled, though something about that phrase stuck with me longer than it should have. A few weeks later, I noticed small, almost invisible shifts. Ryan seemed distracted, sometimes smiling at his phone, other times turning it face down when I walked into the room. Once, while folding laundry, I found a receipt in his pants pocket, a car insurance statement, higher than expected. When I asked, he brushed it off. Premium adjustment. Don't worry about it. And I didn't. Not right away. But the unease grew like static under my skin. One evening, as we sat watching TV, I caught a glimpse of his phone screen reflected on the glass coffee table. It wasn't the message itself that froze me, it was the name. Lila Message. I didn't say anything that night. Instead, I memorized the look on his face. Calm, content, almost guilty. Something inside of me whispered that my beautiful new car, the one parked proudly in our driveway, wasn't what it seemed. But I silenced that voice because sometimes when you love someone, denial is easier than truth. Still, that whisper wouldn't leave me. Every time I drove that car, I felt it, a strange heaviness in my chest, like the air itself was trying to tell me something I refused to hear. And one morning, when I saw the first overdue notice tucked under the wiper, I realized this wasn't a gift. It was evidence. When the first overdue notice appeared on the windshield, I thought it was a mistake. It was a thin white envelope fluttering slightly in the morning breeze. I remember standing there in my robe, coffee in one hand, staring at the bold letters. Final notice, payment past due. The name at the top was mine, but the account number, I'd never seen it before. At first, I laughed softly to myself. This must be an error. I whispered, glancing toward the house where Ryan was shaving, the bathroom window fogged with steam. He handled everything financial. Every bill, every loan, every payment. Ryan had a system. I trusted him. I always trusted him. So, I folded the notice neatly and placed it beside his wallet on the counter. When he came down, still adjusting his tie, I asked casually, "Hey babe, this came with the car. Something about a missed payment?" He didn't even look up. "Oh, that? Yeah, it's nothing. I set up autopay. Must have glitched. I'll fix it later." Then he kissed my forehead and walked out the door like nothing had happened. But the way his shoulders stiffened, just slightly as he turned away, that was the first real clue. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. So one evening, while Ryan was out meeting a client, I went looking through the car's glove compartment, searching for anything that might explain the notice. I found the manual, some old receipts, and at the very bottom, a folder with dealership paperwork. My hands trembled as I opened it. The car loan was under my name, yes, but the payments? They were linked to a joint account I'd never heard of. Not our main checking, not our savings, something else. Account name R. Thompson and L. Moore. L. Moore. I whispered the name out loud and it felt like ice water poured down my spine. That name, that Leela from his phone. I sat there in the driver's seat, staring at the papers under the dim garage light, feeling my heartbeat crawl up my throat. He hadn't bought me this car as a gift. He'd financed it using an account tied to another woman. And worse, he'd done it in my name. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay beside him, listening to his steady breathing, wondering how many lies could fit between those breaths. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I needed proof. Not emotion, not suspicion, proof. So, I went to the bank. I remember sitting in that sterile office, the scent of paper and perfume filling the air. The banker, a young woman with kind eyes, typed in my ID information. "Can you tell me about this account?" I asked, sliding the paper toward her. She glanced down. Her eyes flickered, then quickly softened. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you're not listed as the primary on this account." My voice cracked. "But my name is on the car loan linked to it." She hesitated, a long, careful pause that told me she knew something was wrong but couldn't say it. Then she leaned forward just slightly and said quietly, "Ma'am, sometimes people create co-accounts for business or personal reasons. If you think there's been a mistake, you might want to speak directly to the other account holder." "Are Thompson?" I asked. She nodded faintly. And that's when it hit me like a gut punch. Ryan hadn't just cheated emotionally. He tied his affair to our financial life. When I got home, the world looked different. The same walls, the same family photos, but every frame felt like a lie now. I opened his office drawer and found the same name again, L. Moore, printed on an envelope, tucked inside a file labeled consulting contracts. There was a check inside. Not from Ryan, from her. The memo line said, "car payment." I dropped the check like it burned me, because suddenly everything made sense. The surprise car, the premium adjustment, the nights he came home smelling of expensive perfume that wasn't mine. I had been driving the symbol of their relationship every single day, smiling, proud, showing it off to neighbors, thinking it was love. It wasn't love. It was hush money. That night, when he walked in, whistling softly, I was sitting at the kitchen table. The papers were spread in front of me like a crime scene. "Ryan?" I said quietly. "Who was Leela Moore?" He froze. I could see the blood drain from his face just for a second before he forced a laugh. "What are you talking about?" I slid the check toward him. "You tell me." He looked at it, really looked, and then sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's complicated, Anna." "No," I said, voice trembling. "It's simple. Either you tell me the truth or I'll find it myself." Silence. Then, softly, he said, "She's someone I used to work with. She helped me get a better rate on the car. That's all." I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears. "She writes you checks for my car? And you expect me to believe that?" Ryan didn't answer. He just stared at me, jaw tight, eyes filled with something between guilt and anger. "Finally," he said, "you always make things bigger than they are." That line, that one sentence, was what broke something in me. Because for years, I had swallowed my intuition to keep the peace. And now, peace was the very thing he had used to destroy me. When he went upstairs, I sat there in the dark, surrounded by the sound of the refrigerator humming and the rain starting outside. I thought about every smile, every kiss, every I love you that now felt like someone else's words. And in that stillness, I promised myself one thing. I wouldn't confront him again without proof. Next time, I'd make sure the truth destroyed his lies publicly. The morning after that storm, I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't rage anymore. It was clarity. You know that quiet ache that comes when you finally stop denying what's been in front of you all along? That was me. For years, I'd built my world around Ryan's smile. And now I saw it for what it really was. A mask. Carefully polished and perfectly timed. But this time, I wasn't going to cry in silence. I was going to listen to the silence. The next day, when Ryan left for work, I followed him. Not immediately. I waited. I watched the clock, letting 15 minutes pass before slipping into my red SUV, the same one he'd gifted me, the one she'd paid for. The irony wasn't lost on me. I trailed him through the familiar turns of our quiet town until he pulled into a small cafe near the outskirts, the kind with big windows and too many flowers on the patio. I parked far enough to blend in. My heart was beating so loud I could hear it over the sound of the car's engine. And then I saw her. She was younger. That was my first thought. Early 30s, maybe. Blonde, perfectly styled. The kind of woman who looked like she'd never forgotten a manicure. She smiled when she saw him. And he smiled back. That same smile that used to belong to me. When he leaned across the table and brushed something from her cheek, I felt the world tilt. Not in fury, not even in grief. Just in disbelief that I'd ever been so blind. They laughed, held hands across the table like something out of a movie, except this was my life unraveling in real time. I watched for nearly an hour, every second carving deeper into me like glass. Then I drove away before they could see me. That night, I said nothing. I cooked dinner, set the table, even asked about his meeting. He lied without blinking. It went great, he said, pouring himself a drink. Just business. Just business. How easily he said it. I wanted to scream, to throw the glass against the wall, to ask how business smelled like vanilla perfume. But instead, I smiled and said I'm glad. Because sometimes silence is the most powerful weapon. The next morning, I called the dealership. I asked about the financing and explained that I was reviewing our payments. The man on the other end hesitated before saying, "Oh, yes, the Thompson Moore account. You're the co-signer." Co-signer? That word alone made my stomach twist. "Sir," I said carefully, "could you email me the account statement?" He agreed, and within minutes, the truth was sitting in my inbox, line by line, date by date. Every month, Ryan transferred money from her account to pay for my car. And 2 weeks before the car was delivered, they had both signed the finance papers together. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was a declaration. He had written our marriage out of his future in ink, and I was the last to know. That night, I printed every document. The receipts, the emails, the car note, the check. I placed them neatly inside a folder labeled, "For Ryan." I waited until Sunday morning, his favorite day when he liked to read the paper with his coffee. He sat in his usual chair by the window, looking content, peaceful, the way people look when they think their lives are still safe. I placed the folder on the table in front of him. "What's this?" he asked. "Proof," I said. He frowned, opened it, and for a moment he tried to play dumb, flipping through the papers like he didn't understand. But when his eyes landed on the photo I'd taken of him and Leela at the cafe, his hand froze. The color drained from his face. "Anna." "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't insult me with another lie." He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. "You used her money to buy my car. You made me drive your guilt every single day." Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't stop. "You didn't just betray me, Ryan. You humiliated me." He looked away, voice breaking. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that." I laughed softly. That hollow laugh that comes when the pain's too deep to cry. Then affairs never are they? He stood, running his hands through his hair. "It's over now. It didn't mean anything." "Then why is her name still on the payments?" He had no answer. Just silence. Heavy and loud, the kind that fills every corner of a room. Finally, I said, "You don't need to explain, Ryan. You've already told me everything I need to know." I walked away, not because I didn't love him anymore, but because love without respect isn't love at all. That evening, I drove the red SUV to her address, the one listed on the car documents. When she opened the door, her face went pale. She knew who I was. Maybe she'd always known. I handed her the car keys. "Tell him," I said quietly, "he can finish the payments with you." She tried to speak, but I turned and walked away before she could form a word. The wind was sharp that evening, brushing my tears dry before they could fall. For the first time in months, I felt free. When I got home, I sat on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the trees. I could hear the faint sound of Ryan pacing inside, realizing what I'd done. He came outside eventually, calling my name, but I didn't look at him. I'm not angry anymore. Just done. And in that moment, it felt like every piece of me that had been buried under his lies finally stood up. That night, I slept alone, peacefully, for the first time in years. Because sometimes the end of a marriage isn't a tragedy. It's the beginning of your truth. The next morning, the whole neighborhood knew. I didn't tell them. The car did. It wasn't parked in our driveway anymore. It was sitting right outside Leela Moore's house. And in our small town, a red SUV shines louder than a confession. When I walked into church that Sunday, people whispered, not out of cruelty, but out of shock. Because for years, Ryan had been the man who volunteered at charity drives, smiled at bake sales, and gave firm handshakes that made people trust him. Now they were looking at me differently, with that quiet sympathy women give each other when they know. I didn't cry. I didn't explain. I just smiled softly and sat in my usual pew, holding my chin high. Ryan didn't show up. He couldn't, because when he tried to call Leela that morning, her husband, yes, husband, answered. Turns out, her perfect little secret wasn't so secret either. And when her marriage exploded, so did his. The same week, Ryan was asked to take temporary leave from his firm. Apparently, mixing personal finances with clients wasn't a good look. That night, he came home to pack his things. The house was quiet except for the sound of drawers opening and closing. He stopped by the doorway, suitcase in hand. "I never meant to hurt you," he said quietly. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who once made me feel safe now looked small, tired, and lost. "I know," I said. "You just didn't mean to love me enough not to." He lowered his head and walked out without another word. And just like that, the house exhaled. In the weeks that followed, I found a strange kind of peace. I went back to the flower shop full time. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. And every morning, I made coffee for one, with no guilt, no pretending. One day, a regular customer came in, Mrs. Delaney, the pastor's wife. She took my hand and said, "You carried yourself with grace, dear. Sometimes dignity is the loudest revenge." Her words stayed with me because for so long I thought revenge meant making him pay. But real revenge is peace that he'll never have again. A few months later, Ryan called. He said he was in counseling. He wanted forgiveness. I listened quietly, then said, "Ryan, I forgave you the day I stopped letting your choices define my worth. That was the day I took my power back." He didn't know what to say. And honestly, he didn't need to. Now, when I walk past that empty spot in the driveway, I don't see loss anymore. I see freedom. Because that red car, the one that once symbolized betrayal, ended up giving me the greatest gift of all, myself. Sometimes heartbreak doesn't end with tears. It ends with silence. The kind of silence that slowly rebuilds you, piece by fragile piece. Months passed. Spring came early that year. The same street that once saw me crying in the rain now saw me walking with sunlight on my face. I didn't buy a new car. I didn't need to. I started walking to work, letting the wind play with my hair and the sky remind me I survived. One afternoon, a customer at the flower shop asked if I could help with the bouquet, something that says forgiveness. It made me smile because for the first time, I realized forgiveness isn't about forgetting what they did. It's about freeing yourself from carrying it. So I made her a bouquet of white tulips, the flower of renewal, and I whispered to myself, this is what I became after the fire. One evening, I opened my old photo album, the one I had hidden for months. Every picture told a story, a wedding, a smile, a road trip, a dream. But this time, I didn't see betrayal. I saw a woman who loved deeply, gave everything, and still found strength to stand again. And that's when it hit me. Maybe the reason we go through heartbreak isn't to lose someone, but to find ourselves in the wreckage they left behind. A few weeks later, I took that same red SUV, now fully in my name after the court case, and drove to the ocean. I rolled down the windows, let the salt air fill my lungs, and whispered, "Thank you, God, for ending what wasn't meant for me." Because sometimes the blessing is not in what stays, it's in what leaves you. That night, I sat by the shore and recorded a message on my phone. Not for him, but for every woman who's ever been broken like I was. One day, you'll stop asking why he did it. You'll stop replaying what you could have done differently. And you'll start seeing what you became because of it. You'll see strength where pain used to live. You'll see peace where chaos once screamed. Don't let betrayal make you bitter. Let it make you better. And as the waves hit the sand, I smiled, really smiled, because for the first time, my heart wasn't breaking anymore. It was healing. He gave me a car to hide his affair, but God gave me the road to find myself. Every heartbreak teaches us something. Every betrayal shows us our strength. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story too. And if you want to see more real life stories that stir your heart and soul, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our journey of hope, healing, and courage.